Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone again to the VolunteerMatch Solutions Best Practice Network webinar for March of 2015, Volunteer Recognition Programs Your Employees Will Love. My name is Lauren Wagner, and I'm the Senior Manager of Marketing Strategy here at VolunteerMatch, and I'm going to be helping to facilitate this morning's session. I also have my colleague Tessa Cerebro in the room with me as well, and she's going to be helping to monitor your questions. Hello. All right, so before we jump into things, I wanted to go through a few housekeeping items with y'all. First is that we will hold some time at the end of the webinar to ask questions to our presenters. There are a few different ways that you can send your questions to us throughout the morning. The first is by typing them into the chat box on the right side of your screen, just where we tested the audio a few minutes ago. The second is to tweet them to us. So you can tweet them to @VMSolutions using the hashtag VMBPN. So again, keep those questions coming in throughout the next half an hour, and we will kind of pull them all together and ask them at the end. So the last thing is that we will be sharing a copy of the slides as well as a link to the recorded webinar after the event today. So you will get all of this information as follow-up. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So here at VolunteerMatch, we think that employee volunteer champions really deserve something more than a free t-shirt. Not that free t-shirts aren't great. But today we're going to be hearing from Nationwide and AT&T, two companies that work with VolunteerMatch that get really creative with their employee recognition programs. And so we hope that they'll inspire you to start your own unique rewards practices. So joining us from Nationwide is Brian Paquette, and he is the Director of Workplace Giving and Volunteerism for Nationwide's Office of Corporate Citizenship. In his role, Brian's responsible for the execution and implementation of Nationwide's volunteerism and workplace giving campaigns, programs, and activities. He's been with Nationwide for 12 years, serving in recruiting, learning and development, and operations roles in HR and IT. And from AT&T, we have Kara DeVita. Kara is the Director of Community Programs and part of AT&T's Citizenship and Sustainability Organization. In her role, she leads AT&T's employee giving programs and volunteerism initiatives that create shared value for employees and strengthen local communities. Kara's been with AT&T for 15 years. Kara's held a wide variety of positions in sales and customer service, supporting some of AT&T's largest global customers. So we have two people who have a lot of experience, as you can see, in the employee volunteering and community involvement space. So we're really excited to hear what they have to say. So since we only have 30 minutes this morning, we're doing it a little bit shorter. Let's go ahead and jump into things. So I'd like to welcome Kara to the call. Kara, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Wonderful.
All right. Thank you guys so much for your time. Thanks for letting us present today. So I'm only going to look at one specific program that we use for our volunteer recognition. We have several others, and I'm happy to talk about those as well. But I wanted to go a little bit deeper on one that is a little bit more unique. And it's also timely for us because we just released yesterday our 2014 President's Volunteer Service Award winners, all of our employees that we recognize who provide service back to their communities of 100 hours or more. So this is something that we have chosen to leverage. We started in 2012 recognizing our 2011 recipients. So in 2015, yesterday, we announced our 2014 recipients. So just our fourth year doing it, and give you a little bit of an overview on what this specific program is that we use for volunteer recognition to thank our employees who are out in the community representing AT&T day in and day out. So if you'll move to the next slide. So again, a little bit of background. If you don't know what the President's Volunteer Service Award is, I suggest you go and Google it to learn more. There's plenty of great information out there on what the President's Volunteer Service Award is. There's also varying levels of, I'll just say PVSA. It's a lot easier for me. So the varying levels of the PVSA recognition that you can choose to do. Basically what we have chosen to do is to, we have agreed to be a certifying organization, which means that we have a tool, we track volunteer hours through VolunteerMatch, and we're able to track hours on an annual basis, and employees can log and record their hours, and we go in and take the training and agree to be a certifying organization of the President's Volunteer Service Award. The multiple different awards you can choose are basically tiered on pricing, and we chose the highest award level, which means per employee they receive a certificate signed by the President of the United States. They receive a lapel pin, and they get both of those items with their name on the certificate signed by the President. So there's some varying degrees of the pricing structure while you're looking at it and considering this option. But for us, we thought this was a really unique way to award our employees and thank them. So a little bit about the overview of the recognition. Internally, over on the left-hand side here for internal communications, we start out by thanking our, first reaching out to the employees, telling them congratulations, they are going to be a recipient of this award, and getting their consent. We always ask for their consent first before we go out and list their names and share with their leadership that we are recognizing them for their service of 100 volunteer hours or more. So first thing we do is that once we have all that consent, we go out with a lot of different, a tiered structure where we make sure we provide the list of those names and through various internal channels, their leadership team, we go out to the direct reporting officer, to our chairman, with a list of the folks in his or her organization, and then we go to that person's supervisor, so kind of both ways, bottom up, top down, making sure that they know, and providing different ways and channels that those leaders can directly thank their employees. So whether it's a town hall, a group meeting, it's a really important opportunity for that local and individual and team, wherever they're located, to recognize and thank their employees for their volunteer service. So that's the internal. We also use our internal social media tools. So they get awarded a badge based upon their PBSA level. There is a gold, silver, and bronze. And so they'll have that badge that will appear on their social media profile as well. I was telling someone the other day, I really love it when I see resumes from employees that come across and they include their PBSA recipient. So it's not only a badge for them on their social media site, but I've seen it come across as kind of a badge of honor and something that people are very proud of and want to share even on their resume. So it's a pretty neat thing to have. And we use electronic signage, a lot of other channels that we do internally, video that we share. So those are the different communications. Digital advertising has been really, really interesting. So on the right-hand side are just a couple of the ones. We are localizing those. We have national President's Volunteer Service Award ads that we use. We go out with kind of a national ad, national strategy, but we also have hyper-local strategy. So you can see on the bottom there's one that's in San Antonio. And all of these are pictures of our employees doing their service or doing the things that they love. And it's us just thanking them for doing that. So those are just two different ways that we are using digital ads. And we choose these markets based upon input from our various teams that want to share with us what are their priority markets so that we can help them. So our public affairs teams got together and they share with us a list of kind of their top 10 or so markets where they'd really love to to promote some goodwill and some good things that AT&T employees are doing in that community. So we're able to target that very specifically, target certain people, not outlets, so like conscious consumers, for example. So depending on the market, that would be one example for us. So so that's a good example of the ways that we are using those digital ads to help inspire and encourage others to see the great work that our employees are doing. And then the individual awards, kind of walked through that already. We are actually going to distribute those during National Volunteer Week. So everything we're doing right now is more comms related in focus. We just announced it yesterday. And then during National Volunteer Week coming up in April, the individuals will actually receive those awards. So they'll be able to actually physically get it sent to their home address. We outsourced that a couple of years ago, the distribution. Here locally, we worked with Goodwill to help us package and distribute all of that so that our small but mighty team didn't have to also take that work on for the 4,500 employees. And then the next thing is just our link below. So if you want to go and see it, the website, if you'll scroll to the next slide, I'll wrap up. On the next slide, you should see
Is it showing up
Yep, there we are. Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So on the next slide, you'll see the website there, what it looks like. So that link above, which you'll get as well, you can see this is just a snapshot of it. But this includes the overview. You can sort it by city, by state. It names everyone. I think it's really important to also include our international employees. We thought that this year we added that element. They are not eligible for the President's Volunteer Service Award, nor do I think they might want that certificate signed by the President of the United States. But we wanted a way to recognize them, and there is not an international platform for that, so we created our own AT&T international recognition, and we were able to recognize them because we do ask all of our employees to log their hours. So we came up with our own certificate and pen and made sure that we were able to provide a somewhat similar experience for those employees. And so included in all of our materials is also the recognition of our international employees who achieve that same merit, who qualified. But you can go and if you scroll through this, you'll see the various examples. Again, it's all about our employees. The employee stories are in there that we share so that you can see the various types of local folks that we're highlighting wherever they are. So if they're in Redmond, Washington, or San Antonio, Texas, you know, we're talking specifically about what that employee cares about and what volunteerism means to them. And then we kind of give a little bit of an overview as well on just what our total numbers are, the total volunteer hours, some of those great outputs that we get. And then, you know, I would say just to end, you know, we also have we see a double-digit increase over the last 4 years in just the number of people that want to get it. During National Volunteer Week, we'll also go out with a story just kind of talking more specifically about some of the volunteer projects that we're going to highlight during that week. In several markets where we're going to be doing some local volunteer opportunities and highlighting those organizations and employees who are doing the great work, along with our retirees who contribute so heavily to the number of hours that we do every year. So we're partnering together during National Volunteer Week, and we'll highlight those folks. But again, on the website, you can learn all about it. This is just one of the many ways that we try and thank and recognize our employees. And I'll be happy at the end to answer any questions that you have. But I think I am done with my portion now. Turn it over to my
Thank you so much, Kara.
Yep,
I love that you're including your international employees in your recognition program as well, kind of to keep that consistency across your program, regardless of whether they're domestic or international. That's awesome.
And Kara, we do have one clarifying question. Can you remind us what the number of your employees per year are that qualify for the award?
So as a whole, about 240,000 plus AT&T employees that could qualify. And this year we had over 4,500 employees that chose to log their time, and that means that they had a significant contribution of 100 hours or more. Okay. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Sure, no problem.
All right, thanks so much, Kara. I'm sure we'll come back with some more questions at the end. So now I'd like to welcome Brian to the call from Nationwide. Are you on the line, Brian?
Yeah, sure am. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
And thanks, Kara. That was great. We're actually exploring the Presidential Award as well, so it was very great to hear that it's going so well for you guys. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking very broadly about Nationwide's volunteerism programs, the rewards programs, and then we will dive just a little bit deeper into our rewards programs. But volunteerism is ingrained in the culture of Nationwide. It's been that way from the beginning. It's a part of our business, and I'll show you some examples of that. And sometimes I'm asked why. Why is this such a big part of the way Nationwide operates and the way what Nationwide has built into its policies and things? And there's a couple answers for that. Internally, we have a mantra where we describe ourselves as being more than a business. You know, we're in the insurance and financial services industry. Sometimes that doesn't sound like the most exciting thing in the world, but when we look at it, we're oftentimes there when people are in their most critical points. When you think about property and casualty loss, or certainly loss of life and some of those kinds of things, there are oftentimes in very serious moments where as a business we get involved. And we've always prided ourselves on going beyond just the nuts and bolts of being an insurance carrier or a financial services carrier. Beyond that, we've seen repeated responses to our annual associate engagement survey where our associates talk about the involvement in the community, the opportunity to volunteer, the impact that volunteerism has on their day-to-day job, and their appreciation of the rewards and things in the way that Nationwide supports that. And this year, we're happy to announce we were just named to Fortune 100's Best Place to Work. And a big part of that application was around our corporate citizenship efforts, and in particular, our volunteerism. And all of that would be great in and of itself, but at the same time, we recognize that volunteerism is an important way for us to enhance our brand in the community. It's not uncommon for our agents to report back to us that when they're making a new contact, that oftentimes people will describe some sort of community event or some volunteerism effort that they were aware of prior to really interacting with us as a business. So we see it as a business venture as much as we see it a way to be invested in the communities where we live and work. So let me hit a couple of highlights in terms of our overall volunteerism programs. We use what we call the Nationwide Volunteer Network. That is a partnership with VolunteerMatch. We use this network to track both individual personal volunteerism, things that people are doing on their own time, as well as group and company-sponsored volunteerism. I'll go into detail in these two more in just a second, but we have a volunteer rewards program for every 25 hours of volunteer service, and we have a Volunteer of the Year program that I'll talk about. Along with that, we have some strategic volunteerism, and this is some of the things that we support as a corporation, if you will. One of our big partners is the United Way, and we participate in most of our larger communities in the United Way Days of Caring or Days of Action or Community Caring. Sometimes they run under different titles in different communities. But again, where we're getting out with oftentimes other companies into the community and participating in a variety of volunteer activities. One of our primary causes at Nationwide is around hunger relief. We do a lot in that space. And so we send a lot of folks out to Feeding America, food pantries, and again in the major communities where we live and work. And then we have a very broad and intentional policy around team volunteerism, where in essence a manager can really go out to just about any nonprofit where they or somebody on their team has a passion and can take their team as a team building activity or engagement activity. Oftentimes they'll couple it maybe with a quarterly meeting that goes on in the morning, and then they'll spend the afternoon working at a nonprofit. And again, while we have strategic partners like the United Way and areas of focus like hunger, we really take a very broad and diverse approach to the organizations that we work with. We model that a bit after our business. Our business has a very broad and diverse set of strategic products and services, and we do the same. We don't try and limit our associates very much in terms of where they can volunteer or what gets rewards or what qualifies for our various programs. And then finally, before I dig into some of the rewards, talk a little bit about our nonprofit board service and sponsorships. We have a community impact model that is a tiered model where we talk about the things that are probably more core to our business, like crisis management and that kind of thing, and then build out in those tiers down to community and civic organizations and things. But we find it very important to put our leaders on nonprofit boards and in our communities all the way across the country. And for that, then we have a budget that we carry where we sponsor, sometimes we call them tickets and tables, the various events that go on where we may purchase a table or tickets to an event that the Red Cross or the local animal shelter or wherever our leader on the board, we can support them in that board effort. So now let's take a closer look at a couple of our volunteer rewards programs, specifically what we call our volunteer rewards program. This is available to both associates as well as our nationwide exclusive agents. We have about 34,000 associates and about 3,000 exclusive agents around the country. And they can qualify for our volunteer reward once they've completed 25 hours in a calendar year with a single qualified organization. So we have many associates and agents who volunteer with lots of organizations, but if they invest 25 hours with one organization, there's a submission form. And the reward there is a $100 grant back to the organization and then a paid time off day for the associate. And they can do that twice a year. So we have lots of associates and agents that participate in that program. And again, it's a very broad acceptance in terms of what organizations they can volunteer at. In essence, if it's a nonprofit, if it's a qualified 501 organization, then in general it qualifies for the award. The big event that we do each year, and we're just getting ready, we correlate this with National Volunteer Week as well, is our Volunteer of the Year. We've done this for the last 8 years, and this is a nomination process where associates, the nonprofit organizations themselves, really anyone in the community could nominate an associate, and there's a correlating agent award as well, to be our Volunteer of the Year. And there's a selection criteria. We typically get about 100 or 150 of these applications each year. There's a selection criteria, a couple of tiered judging panels, and we have folks who volunteer every year to be on the judging panel because it's just really engaging to read through all of these applications and read all of the great things that Nationwide associates are doing. But then the winner then receives a $5,000 grant back to their organization, and the 9 finalists, we sort them into the top 10, receive a $500 grant back to their organization, and there's paid time off that goes along with that as well. And I didn't put it on the slides, but actually one of the highlights that we hear from the winners is they also receive a brick on the front walkway of our home office. So there's a small little courtyard, if you will, where, and actually it was brought to mind because I just walked past it, and it's under construction, and we've been very careful with preserving the bricks as we will get a brand new spot to put all of our volunteer of the years. And it's really amazing to see these applications come in. We have a very large base in Columbus, Ohio. About a third of our associates are here. But this year, 70% of our top 10 came from the other sites all around the country. And in fact, while she hasn't quite been announced yet, our winner is coming out of the Scottsdale area. So we get winners from all around the country. We get great submission, many times from other associates, the nonprofits. A lot of times the same individual will get nominated by 7 or 8 different entities, and you can just really tell if they're having an impact on the organization. And then finally, the last one I'll talk about, we have a program that we call Leadership Grants. So back to those board members that I spoke to, specifically each year we go through, and if a nationwide leader has served time on that board, we grant another $500 to that organization above and beyond whatever that individual may have done in terms of their board service. So that's a closer look at our rewards programs in particular in terms of volunteerism.
Great, thank you so much, Brian. I think we had one question come in specifically to Nationwide that Tessa was going to ask.
Yeah, so you're talking about your managers within your company who do group activities, and we were wondering if they are responsible for finding and creating those activities themselves, or do you set them up with those group activities?
Yeah, great question. It's a little bit of both, but it's primarily, oftentimes, and I'm just going to give you a number here. I don't know if this is exact science, but I would say in the neighborhood of 3 out of 4 are probably finding their own. Oftentimes, it's a connection that the manager or someone on their team has. You know, they're already volunteering somewhere, and they say, hey, they need this every Friday. Let's go out and do this next month. But we do have, we use VolunteerMatch. Folks can search for organizations through our nationwide volunteer network. But we also have folks in our Office of Corporate Citizenship that if you give us a call, we can help you find a team event. Sometimes some of the larger events, a team of 5 or 6 isn't tough for somebody to find, but sometimes there are department events and things that may have 25, 30, 40 people, occasionally even 100 people or so, and those are, of course, are a challenge. But we do absolutely support, whether it's 5 or 50, they can give us a call and we can help them find those events as well.
Okay, great, Brian. And how many people do you have on your team that manages your volunteer program? Where someone is wondering, it seems like a lot of applications to go through in the judging process for Volunteer of the Year.
Sure. If you look at all of these programs, there isn't anyone that is specifically dedicated to volunteerism. We spread our folks across all of our programs, so we have about a dozen annual programs that go on, of which we've listed about 3 here. There's about 5 people who are dedicated across all of those programs.
Okay.
Oh, we have a lot of questions coming in.
Yeah.
So one that just came in that's for both Kara and Brian. Somebody's curious if you have any recognition programs that, sorry, there's so many questions coming in, I'm losing the one that I was reading. If you have any recognition programs that recognize employees who inspire other employees to volunteer, for example, like leaders that coordinate volunteer events for their team.
This is Kara. We do that a little bit more specifically within the program. So within our signature volunteer initiative is our Aspire Mentoring Academy program, which is our mentoring initiative, and within that there are, communication leads, regional ambassadors and champions and so forth, and we have awards for them as well. We'll have like an appreciation event for them, and then an annual event, an award that we give out to our employee resource groups who also participates with that signature event, and same goes for some of our other initiatives. So do want our sustainability activation, but I think they're a little bit more specific, so other people who inspire those folks, we do have recognition for almost every single one of those specific programs.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Tessa, did you have?
Yeah, so one question that just came in for Nationwide. For your board grants, are there specific requirements for the length of the term on the board or the number of hours they need to volunteer with the organization?
No, typically if they've been placed on the board, so all of these board grants are for situations where Nationwide has asked a leader to be placed on that board. So we have people beyond that who are serving in their own capacity. So it's not necessarily that someone is on a board, they're automatically in that group, if you will. But we have about 250 leaders that we've asked specifically, either because we want that engagement, sometimes it's for their own development, where we've said, will you serve on this board? And so in that case, then they would qualify in that year for a grant for the board.
Okay, great, thank you. We have a question here for both of you. So how do you prove that these programs are working, or how do you track the impact of the programs?
This, I know for the one that I spoke about, for us, we look at the double-digit increase every year in those that want to get it. So there's some of those metrics. We also look at the analytics related to the digital ads. We can look at the open rates and all that great stuff. So we're able to track the digital ads. I will say originally we were taking out full-page ads in USA Today, listing every employee name, photo, but that was one ad, one day, and really expensive, and we found that we can use the same budget, target, go hyper-local and national, and be able to track it. So I think that that's been a lot more effective for us in the last 2 years.
Okay, great. Do you have any thoughts on that one, Russ?
I was going to say, yeah, we have a couple of different ways we look at it. So internally, we track things like participation rates. We want to broaden the number of people who are involved and engaged in our volunteerism activities. And so we look at program by program, those types of things, year over year. Externally, again, we're just honored to be recognized by the Fortune 100, as I mentioned before. And that was very specifically called out in that award that our corporate citizenship and our volunteerism was a specific piece that had a significant impact on what our associates said, because that award does a pretty significant associate survey in terms of what's great about your company. And so, and then again, just anecdotally, what we hear from our sales folks, our financial folks, for example, will oftentimes ask the Office of Corporate Citizenship to come and present when they're doing sales presentations to larger, we do a lot of state government, city government, that kind of thing. We'll actually be asked to come along and talk about our volunteerism programs and as an incentive to working with us or an appreciation for working with us. So those are some of the things we track as successful.
Okay, and we have one more question. So if you can try to make these answers quick, I know this might be a longer one, but when you were first implementing these programs, did you face any internal struggles with getting approval for the programs?
Yes. Probably want a little more than that, huh? Volunteerism is ingrained in our culture, so generally speaking, many of these are long-standing programs. But certainly, we have a lot of stakeholders. There are a lot of, I'm sure like most corporate citizenship groups, there are a lot of people who want input and have ideas and what should be next. And so there are a lot of competing priorities. That's probably our biggest challenge, is just sorting through the priorities to what's next and what should be rising to the top.
This is Kara. I will say for the prior to 2011, when we started to talk about this, we had been receiving this award at the company level. So the decision to go down to the individual was supported, I think, because we had already been receiving this as a company from another organization, an NGO that was submitting our company name, and it kind of just progressed. But I think that ours was a little bit more the risk averse of, oh gosh, the first year we did it, 2,700 employees received the award. Is that going to be meaningful when you have 200 some odd thousand employees? And what will legal think, and all those fun challenges that everyone faces. But for the most part, it was really exciting for us to go through it, and we had a lot of support for this effort. So to be at 5,400, over 5,400 this year, from where we started, a few years ago, I think that's exciting. So
great. Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for joining us this morning and for your thoughtful answers. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know we said we'd keep it to a half an hour. So we'll go ahead and get wrapped up here. Sorry, let me just unpause my screen. So quickly before we end the call this morning, just wanted to remind everybody that there are other ways to stay up to date with VolunteerMatch and what's going on in the world of volunteering and corporate social responsibility. You can follow us on our blog at volunteeringiscsr.org. Follow us on Twitter at VM_solutions. And you can also sign up for our monthly Good Companies newsletter, which you can do on our blog as well. So stay tuned for our announcement for the next Best Practice Network webinar. We'll be sending that out in the coming weeks. Thank you again to Kara and to Brian for joining us this morning and for giving your time to share about your programs to everybody. And we will see you all next month.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.